Howdy, my name is Mike, and this is my second inking demo. Here's a close-up of the tools that I'm using, the Speedball Super Black ink and the Sapphire No. 4 brush. And the last one I did was of Luco, and the line there was a much more strong, steady line. It helped better define the character. This character, Tamino, I wanted a much more sort of lived-in look, and for that I need to change the way that I apply ink to the paper. I want it less strong and defined, and I want it to have a lot more character. So as you see here, the application of the ink is in a little bit more jerky fashion. I'm also changing the pressure with the brush during the stroke. So instead of it being a very smooth, continuous stroke, it changes its width in almost a random fashion. When I'm putting in the stripes here in Tamino's nose, I jerk the brush up at the end of the stroke, which gives a nice sharp point. It's a little hard to see here at the camera, but you'll see it at the end in the final high-res copy of the image. And this is another one of the reasons that I like to use a brush and ink over digital means, and that's the stylus on a graphics tablet doesn't have the same feedback as a brush, and those kind of jerky motions don't translate as well digitally as they do with ink. I'm waiting for somebody to come out with a stylus that pretty much works like a brush pen, and once that happens I'll probably switch over to that and never look back. But for now, getting lines like the ones under his eye there would be really hard to do with a stylus and a graphics tablet. I could probably plot it out as a Bezier curve in Illustrator, but it takes some of the spontaneity out of it, so I can just wick that stroke in and then I'm done. Here when I'm putting in the eyebrows on Tamino, I'm making strokes pretty much like the ones I did for Luco, in that they're thin at one end and then thick in the middle, but I'm sort of jerking the brush as well because I still want that sort of random feel to it, and I'm trying not to think too much about the strokes like I did with Luco. I'm just putting them in, applying the pressure, and that's why my hand looks a little bit more jerky than it did last time. And as I finish up the right ear, we're going to pretend not to notice that I forgot to put the little stripes in like I did in the left ear. Thankfully, before I scanned the image, I noticed that I left this out and managed to put the little stripies back in. So skipping ahead, we're going to one of the lines that is the big difference between inking a character like Luco and a character like Tamino, and that is that, as I said, I liked him to have this real lived-in look, and there's a lot of wrinkles in what he is and what he wears. And so the lines I'm putting in for the sleeve here are not only just as jerky as they were above, but even more so, and there's a lot of differentiation in the pressure I'm putting on the brush to get those kind of wavy lines. And I want to do that all in one stroke, because if you fiddle with it too much, it starts to get a little bit too precise and it looks a little bit too overworked. So again, with ink, once it's down, I've made my decision and I can move on. And it's one of the immediacies of the medium that I really like. Here I'm putting the wrinkles in the sleeve, and again I want those wrinkles very quickly done, one stroke. I don't want to fiddle with them, but I am trying to change the pressure on the brush so that there's variance in them. And I like to plot them out a little bit in the pencil drawing, but not fully, so that they can stay somewhat spontaneous. And some of the lines I ink and some of them I don't. Here on the other sleeve I'm doing the same as I did with the first, and giving that little ripple in the fabric to make it look more worn and more wrinkled. And I'm going to skip ahead again a little bit, and this time I'm putting in the ridges of Tamino's sweater. And the ones going down the main body of the sweater are probably my favorite part to ink. I've adapted a pattern from Japanese kimono cloth, and I believe the original pattern was supposed to suggest water. There were other parts to it, and I edited them out because it's just supposed to look like a sweater. But this one I'm trying to just do long straight lines that vary in thickness as the line goes down. And this was actually one of the exercises that I used to do before I started any given ink drawing with the brush so that I could get a better feel of how to control it. And done on a separate piece of paper, it looks a little like this. And again, I'm not trying to be too precise. I just want the lines to vary in thickness against each other. So where one line is thick and then thin, the next line is thin and then thick, and so on and so forth. It sort of looks a little bit like a wood grain pattern, I guess, but the original idea was supposed to look like water. And as I said, this is one of the patterns I would do as an exercise to get started. I also would sometimes do cross-hatching, or really anything that allowed me to get a feel of the control of the brush before I inked a drawing so that I felt warmed up and ready to go. I've skipped ahead to near the end of the drawing, and I'm about to put in the tip of Tamino's tail. One of the tricks that I've learned is when you've got to have two lines that come together in a smooth seam, try and do it in an area of spot black, so that if you have to make adjustments, those adjustments won't show nearly as much because they're all in one big area of black. And then the final detail I'm going to put in are the stitches in Tamino's trench coat, and they're really small, fine lines, and thankfully the Sapphire No. 4 brush gives me the kind of control that I need so I can put in something that small, and as well with that brush put in strokes that are much, much thicker. Watching this, I see that I still have that death grip on the ferrule of the brush, holding it as I would maybe a pen or a pencil. And I guess that is the same between this and the Luco drawing. The big difference is that with the Luco drawing, I was making the strokes themselves a lot slower and more deliberate because I needed a much smoother and definitive line. And with Tamino, it's the speed of the stroke and the change in pressure that's really the difference and gives it that sort of wrinkled look. Well, I've come to the end of the drawing and pretty much the end of the demo. And this is what the Tamino drawing looks like, all cleaned up and erased. Note that the stripes are back in the ear and on the chin, which I had also forgotten. I hope you found this somewhat helpful, and thank you very much for watching.